Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I'm Ryan Wormeli, joined on this Tuesday morning by Andrew Erickson and by Chris Welsh. Fellas, thank you for filling in without me last week. I was not in a good spot to be doing the show. I am better this week, so I am back, and I hope everybody is excited to see the three of us back together because I know I am. We're going to jump into our running backs discussion here for our buy low, sell high. But before we do, we usually talk about Monday Night Football at the top of this show. We are going to talk a bit about the game. It was a close game, tons of penalties. I think they said over 200 yards of penalty yardage in that Monday night game between the Bills and the Jets. Bills won 23-20. But we have to talk about the Jets side because this morning they just made a big trade. Davante Adams. Let's quickly get the Bills side out of the way. Ray Davis, really the main highlight. Erickson, 20 attempts, 97 yards. He also had 3 catches for 55 yards. That big 42-yard catch was a lot of the yardage there. What was your big takeaway from here? And I know that to a degree, we kind of had to just remember James Cook in the back of our head, but Davis looked really good.
Yeah, no, people were not able to tackle him. He kind of looked like Braylon Allen looked a couple weeks ago on a Thursday night game in prime time where tacklers were just bouncing off of Ray Davis. So he looked great. He got the bell cow work over. Ty Johnson also looked good as well. I think, if anything, the main takeaway is with Ray Davis, if James Cook misses any more time, then you can feel confident playing Ray Davis in your lineup. But the fact of how well this Bills run game was without James Cook, and the fact that James Cook is banged up, then I think they're going to potentially take some of the work off of James Cook, even when he does return to the lineup. So I don't think that this is great for James Cook's long-term outlook for the rest of the season. Again, you still have, the vulturing of touchdowns, right? That's the big thing with James Cook. He's been scoring touchdowns this year, which has been great. It's been different from years past. But now Ray Davis, I know he didn't score, but he looks like a guy that can smash it into the end zone from the 5-yard line. So that's kind of concerning for me. Again, obviously, you want to pick up Ray Davis if he's available in the waivers. In deeper leagues, Ty Johnson, I think, makes sense as well. But yeah, both Buffalo Bills running backs look really great.
Yeah, Welsh, Davis seems like something bordering on a must start if Cook is out again in the future. When Cook is on the field, though, standalone value here with Davis?
I don't know. I don't think I'm as optimistic on the Ray Davis side just because, like what you're alluding to, we have to see that with James Cook. It has been all James Cook. He's out. Ray Davis eats, looks really great. I think this is going to be a tiny eat-in, but like the difference with, let's say, Bucky Irving or Tank Bigsby was we saw these guys with their counterparts and we saw them succeed. So we're like, okay, this makes sense. This will actually hurt this player because it is hurting the player. We don't have anything that tells us that's the case. They love James Cook. He's been a touchdown monster. I think he is still going to be the primary touchdown guy, even if there are a few snaps taken away. I would say this is a tiny bit, a minimal hit to him. I really think we have to see it. I would say it's probably worthwhile speculating. And if Ray Davis is sitting out there, you probably want to pick him up in case this is bigger. But I think this is going to be to a smaller degree than what we've seen with any of these other running backs that have taken away, like I said, Bucky and Tank and Braylon Allen. I think this will be the lowest degree of any of those backs.
All right, let's focus on the big news, which is on the other side of this one. The Jets, again, they did lose this game, and people were joking, at halftime, Davante Adams is going to be on the way to New York to get traded to the Jets. That essentially is how it played out. Woke up this morning to see news that this trade is finalized. I believe it was a 3rd-round pick going to the Raiders that conditionally could move up to a 2nd, if I saw that correctly. Guys, I kind of planned, after watching last night's game, to talk about how we finally kind of saw the Jets stars that we were drafting in the first round be all first-round players in the same game together. Breece Hall, 18 rushes, 113 yards. He also had 5 catches for 56 yards. Didn't get in the end zone, but that was the kind of usage we like, the kind of efficiency, explosiveness we like. And then Garrett Wilson, 8 catches, 107 yards, and a touchdown. I don't know that he caught a pass after he had that kind of injury scare in the end zone. I think it all came before that, but, really nice day. And that's even with Allen Lazard having a big day as well. And now you throw Davante Adams into this mix. So, Erickson, let's start with you. With this Adams trade, are you most focused on maybe raising Aaron Rodgers in your rest of season ranks? Are you focused on knocking down Garrett Wilson or Allen Lazard? What is your initial reaction to the player most affected by this is blank?
Well, I'm a Breece Hall guy, so it all matters about Breece Hall at the end of the day, and this is him going to be a top 3 running back rest of season because we got the usage. He had 87% snap share. That is unreal from what we're seeing with running backs in committees now, and this was a new offensive play caller, and they gave Breece the ball. They fed Breece the ball through the air and on the ground. What does Adams do to this offense? Make it better. give you more opportunities for touchdowns. Again, he had a monster game and he didn't even score. So you're going to see him find the end zone more with this offense, moving the ball better and more effectively with Davante Adams out in the fold. Now, I think the biggest hit and concern for fantasy managers is Garrett Wilson, right? We had tossed in the idea about this is potentially going to happen. Put Garrett Wilson on the block just to see, because we know Adams is going to get there and this is going to hurt his value. Just on the market, that's how we're viewing the situation. Adams is Aaron Rodgers' guy. And we've seen this play out with Alan Lazard, right? Someone that did basically nothing last year and all of a sudden is a touchdown machine because Aaron Rodgers is his quarterback. So right now, I think, and this is probably more of a contrarian take on it, but I think that the stock on Wilson is going to go so low because of Adams ending up there that I actually think he's now kind of turning into a buy, because the sentiment's going to be, you have to get rid of Garrett Wilson. Somebody asked me, should I trade Garrett Wilson for Juju Smith-Schuster? That's where we're going to get deals.
That's
because
ridiculous.
People are freaking out about Garrett Wilson. And look, rightfully so. This hurts his value long-term, but looking at even in the short term, right, and at the second half of the season for the Jets have a great schedule in the second half of the season. If you look at their next three matchups, Steelers, Patriots, Texans, three teams that all have number one cornerbacks, in my opinion, that can lock down number one wide receivers. So Joey Porter Jr., Christian Gonzalez, Derek Stingley. Who are they going to match up with if Davante Adams is on the Jets? Davante Adams, not Garrett Wilson. So yes, the targets are going to come down overall. But we've seen, at least this year with the Jets, they've been able to support two receivers for fantasy, Alan Lazard and Garrett Wilson. So the bet on buying low on Wilson now is that Lazard just becomes irrelevant. And I don't know if that's going to happen or not, just based on the chemistry he has with Rodgers. But if you believe Wilson is a better player than Lazard, I do, then I think that this is an opportunity to actually kind of flip the switch and now go after Garrett Wilson because his value has just hit rock bottom. I'm not sure, Welsh, how you feel about it, but again, you can't sell Wilson now because the value is just not there anymore.
Do you think that, like, I know that Aaron Rodgers is going to pepper Davante Adams with targets because that's his guy, like you said. Do you think opposing defenses will game plan that way, Welsh? Do you think they will say Davante Adams is the main threat, and if we have a cornerback one that shadows the top receiver, we want him on Adams, not Garrett Wilson at this stage in their careers, respectively? I mean, is Adams that much better of a player than Wilson in a vacuum right now?
I don't think it's that he's a better player. He's an immaculate route runner too, and he's a great separator. And I think I don't know if 100% the number one corner will be on Davante Adams. Again, I think it's something that we're going to have to see. But I think one of the reasons behind it is because of that early separation. It's interesting because I almost decided to I didn't want to do it last minute and cause a wrinkle, to put Garrett Wilson as my full-on buy here. Because I completely agree with what Erickson's saying, that he's going to get too low, but I also take out the chaos of it. I think, like, you can look at this as a positive for Garrett Wilson as well. Garrett Wilson going into this week, 36% first read percentage with the Jets. Do we think that Davante Adams is going to come in and take away those first reads? I actually don't, because I think he's the biggest playmaker. And what did we talk about, Erickson and I talked about all last week, was when they get back to basics with the new offensive play caller, it's going to be two things. It's going to be Breece Hall running the ball, get it in his hands, and get the ball in Garrett Wilson's hand. And they did. What's been the biggest deficit for the Jets right now? It's coming off of second reads and finding a receiver you can trust. Mike Williams cost them the game by slipping and falling. He had to go to Alan Lazard. I actually see this as a huge positive to Breece Hall. I agree. Now you're creating this big separation for secondaries. People got to move back because there's more fear, especially if they put three wide receivers out there. But also, I actually don't think that Garrett Wilson's first read percentages are going to change. I think that can stick. But guess what? He has the ultimate backup weapon across the board in Davante Adams. When he looks to Garrett Wilson and he's covered, he can dump it quick to Davante Adams, not worrying about, these guys already have a connection read, not worrying about any of the issues with Mike Williams or the guys like Conklin. I think Alan Lazard takes the biggest hit. I think Adams can be a great, wide receiver too in this offense, but I don't really think Garrett Wilson is going to come off. And we're talking about the biggest thing here. Secondaries and defenses have a real issue to deal with when they're going to play against the Jets right now. Are you going to play up on Breece Hall? Are you going to put the number one corner locked down on Garrett Wilson or Davante Adams? So it might go back and forth a little bit, but I don't really think Wilson should be dropped down that much because he already wasn't exciting for a lot of people. So if people are talking about trading him for Juju Smith-Schuster, he's the biggest buy on the planet for me right now. And I would have put him in that, but at least we're talking about it.
Erickson, quickly before we move on from this, where do you have Aaron Rodgers rest of the season? Because now he's throwing to two very high-level receivers, plus a guy in Alan Lazard who's played pretty well. He has this running back in Breece Hall. Is Rodgers moving up your ranks at all?
He's a QB2 still. He doesn't have any value with his legs. Again, I talked about how the schedule eases up for the Jets in the second half of the season. So I think that he's a streamable guy. I think that in the right matchups, you can play him. To compare him to someone that I felt kind of weird putting him ahead of, especially after his massive week, I actually put him ahead of Jared Goff. I don't like Goff's rest of season schedule as much, and they're relying on the run game with the Lions. I think too with the Jets, you don't want to get carried away because I think it's still the Breece Hall show. I think that's really, I know that the receivers are the ones whose values are fluctuating the most, but I just think this means Breece Hall is going to finally live up to where at least I had him ranked this season as the RB1. I think we're going to finally get to see it, especially with this offense just producing more touchdowns with Adams in the fold.
Let's jump into our running backs conversation. We'll start with the running backs to buy as usual. This is ahead of week 7. Hard to believe we are already here. Welsh, start us off with your running back to buy.
All right, the running back I'm buying is a bigger name, but just hasn't had a whole lot of equity this season because of injury. I want to buy Joe Mixon right now. Mixon, another solid game is being active. Mixon currently is averaging the 4th most rushing yards per game in the NFL, but he's only got those 3 games under his belt. What's interesting is 2 of those 3 games, he has gone under 14 carries. So he has this one, both of the 2 games I think have, or it's like only a couple carries less than that first game where he was like a dominant carry guy. So they've kind of eased him back in. But you've also saw Cam Akers completely take a step away. He was the guy filling in for Joe Mixon at that time. And as soon as they got into this week, it's a little bit of sprinkle of Dameon Pierce, but it is Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon makes this offense better. They get him the ball in the passing and the receiving game. And here's the deal. He's performing like a top 5 back, but I think values currently have got him outside the top 10. He's got an almost 80% inside the 10 carry rate, which I know we do a lot of focus on the inside the 5, but that is also more potential touchdown equity. He's 70%, by the way, inside the 5 for this team. That's a heavy passing team that has to keep teams honest. And really what this is about for me, this is identifying a player that I don't think potential market value is to what the actual related value is. And if you have somebody that is valuing him outside of the top 10, oh, he's a pseudo RB1 or something like that, I really like the idea of being able to acquire him for that upside of that top 5 potential range, just because he's I think he's a monster on this team, and the usage is going to keep going up now that he's healthy. And I think the lower amount of carries help them a little bit. And I think there's a little bit of negativity with like Nico Collins out, people not sure what the Texans look like. I think there's a lot of little tiny things that are poking around making Joe Mixon look like a really nice buy. You're not buying low. I think you're just buying adequately. I think you're buying in that range. And I think there's upside for the rest of the season with Joe Mixon.
I was surprised. I mean, it's an interesting name to put on the list. I was surprised when I pulled up our expert consensus rankings to just see where he was in ECR for our rest of season rankings. And he's outside the top 10. He is at RB11, so he's in that RB1 range. But I thought he was going to be higher because I'm with you. I think the upside is higher just given the usage we've seen when he's on the field, what we know Bobby Slowick wants to do as a play caller, and the offensive guys surrounding him, even with some of them banged up right now. So I'm fully with you here. I'm not going to be buying him as a top 3 running back because I don't think you have to, but I agree that the upside is there just given the usage. Erickson, where do you have Joe Mixon rest of season?
I have an RB7. So I
think that's a much better range.
Maybe I'm driving the Joe Mixon train to get him up inside that top 10 because he's played 2 games, right? Where he's been fully healthy and he's smashed in both games. So, one of the reasons why I don't have as much Derrick Henry as I want and should is because I waited for Joe Mixon because I thought that the thesis on the plays was similar. Free agent running back or new running back, new team in a high-powered offense, and he's going to get a full workload. So Mixon, again, obviously not has been as healthy as Derrick Henry or as productive, but at least in the 2 games he has played, he has been a basically top 10 fantasy running back. So he's fully healthy now. The Texans have this relentless, I don't know why Slowick wants to run the ball so much, but he does. And a lot of times it doesn't work, but they're feeding Joe Mixon through the air and on the ground. It only takes 1 or 2 big plays for him to pay off, especially with the amount of touchdowns that he has with this role in the Texans offense. So this is another, it's not really a buy low because he's coming off a big game against the Patriots, but he looked good, man. He's looked good when he's been healthy, and I agree. Let's buy Joe Mixon.
Is there any big name receiver that you can think of that you would trade for Mixon as an example? Either of you guys?
Davante Adams, maybe?
I was just going to say maybe one of the Jets guys. Yeah.
Yes.
I love that move.
I would do that.
Yeah. I don't know if you could do that because he hasn't been playing. Like, I have him in a couple spots.
Yeah.
But yeah,
if you could. Yeah.
Welsh, we didn't. I just wanted to say one more thing on the Jets. So rest of season, would you take Wilson or Adams straight up?
Wilson.
Okay. I think I would take
You're going to take Adams. Yeah, I'm going to take
Wilson.
Wilson.
Just because I just don't want to bet against the connect. Again, I think I like buying low on Garrett Wilson, but I mean, Adams is still Rodgers' guy.
I wouldn't be shocked if these guys are within like 5 spots of each other, though. But it could be the difference between one being a wide receiver 1 and one being a 2. There's also a potential that these guys, you hope they don't do the Ayuk Debo thing where it's like 1 week it's one guy that's big and one guy that's kind of on the median range. I just don't think the offense is going to change off of what they want to do with Garrett Wilson. They just have a piece that creates a safety net to do all these great things now in Davante Adams, because it's like Davante Adams probably doesn't even need to know the playbook that well. Him and Aaron Rodgers' connections on what Rodgers can tell him to do is going to be that safety net. And I think Wilson, bigger plays are in the future for Wilson because play Davante Adams a little bit shorter.
I kind of think neither of them will be a wide receiver 1 the rest of the way. I think they'll both be high-end wide receiver 2s. I hope that one of them kind of at least establishes himself and they can be like a very clean like 1 and 2, but we'll see. Erickson, who's your running back to buy?
We can dream, can't we? My running back to buy is Austin Ekeler. And I think this is the perfect time to get him because he's coming off a terrible game production-wise. 9 carries for 21 yards because he was facing, we got to bring him up, Worm, because they're back on the show. The Ravens defense that you cannot run the football on, even though the Commanders have one of the best run offenses in the NFL, even they struggled, especially without Brian Robinson. So, but the underlying metrics with Eckler's usage, 75% snap share. Brian Robinson Jr. is still dealing with this knee injury. He missed this week. I don't know when he's going to be healthy. Could he miss another week? I'm not exactly sure, but Austin Ekeler has looked fantastic this year. Among qualifying running backs, he ranks first in the NFL in terms of yards per touch among running backs. Austin Ekeler, yes, the guy that looked horrible last year because he was dealing with injuries, he's fully healthy. So I think right now, Austin Ekeler, and he was someone that I probably should have had on the buy last week and I said to buy Javonte Williams like a fool. Worm, you should have stopped me from bringing that up on the show. But I did mention it to Welsh after the show that I should have just said Ekeler. So I'm going with my gut here, Austin Ekeler as the buy, because you know who they're playing this week? Oh, it's not the Ravens defense. It is the Carolina Panthers defense, who is still giving up yards to Atlanta Falcons running backs as we speak. So I'm going to go with buying Austin Ekeler. And you also, when you look at the FantasyPros strength of schedule tool, which is something I like to reference when I'm trying to look at buys and sells for players long-term, Commanders, #1 schedule for fantasy running backs for the rest of the season by Austin Ekeler.
What do you think, Welsh, about Ekeler? I mean, it's not like Brian Robinson is out for the year or anything like that. How do you kind of evaluate this backfield now, knowing that they have this awesome schedule moving forward?
Yeah, I think we're in the same ballpark, and we just maybe are, playing a little bit of a different game, if you will, because I love that the yards and the production per touch is up there with Ekeler. But at the same time, I think his efficiency is built off of how they're using him. I'm not sure there's a lot of upside. He has not gotten to 10 carries so far this year. He gets somewhere between 10 to 13 touches per game. And this happened with Robinson out. So I think he's effective and efficient. And what I like about buying him is you're not buying him high because it was a bad rushing game. He had a pretty good receiving game, though. It was his best receiving game, or second best, 4 catches, 47 yards. He looks really good out there doing that. So what I like is people will look at a guy like Austin Ekeler and be like, well, Robinson's going to come back. He'll kind of fade away. I think Ekeler is a really great flex option right now, and there is potential because of what he is doing per touch. You would hope that long-term the Commanders are going to see what he's doing, this efficiency, and they would use him more. I'm just not sold that they will. Even when Brian Robinson was out, they still aren't getting him to 10 rushes. They are not rushing the ball enough with him, but they really do, and they're finding some effectiveness of throwing the ball to him out of the backfield because he's making big plays. He had think it was too big. I had bet, that was one of my bets this week. I didn't put it on the show, but Ekeler, his receiving yards, I think he was 0.5 away with one reception, and then he got it with the other one. So I think Ekeler is a good 60 to 70 yard guy per game. I just don't know if there's more upside with it. And we've seen that without Robinson. Like they're not going to give him this big, crazy workload because I think this is his efficiency. So I'm down with this. I just don't think I'm like, slam the table, go get Austin Ekeler. Maybe, Erickson's not exactly as well, but there's a lot of things that are beneficial here for a guy that I think people would see as a throwaway.
The roller coaster of an NFL season is moving right along, and it promises to be a month full of tricks, treats, and of course, touchdowns. And DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, is the number one place to bet touchdowns, running it in from the 1 or an 80-yard bomb. We don't care how they score touchdowns. We just want to bet on them. DraftKings heard us and is delivering. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple, like a player to score a touchdown. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your pick. The Sunday slate in Week 7 looks awesome. We've got Chiefs 49ers in the late window, of course. San Francisco laying 1.5 at home. The early window looks even better. An epic NFC North battle between Detroit and Minnesota. The Vikings are laying 2 points in that one. Also, Texans Packers with Jordan Love laying 2.5 points against CJ Stroud. Those lines and odds are subject to change, but wherever they land, this slate looks incredible. Here's a reason for new customers to do a touchdown dance of their own. Bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Score big with DraftKings Sportsbook, the number one place to bet touchdowns. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code FantasyPros. That's code FantasyPros for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. All right, guys, let's go to our running backs to sell. Welsh, kick us off.
I want out of the Cincinnati Bengal RB business. That's going to be my big thing here, as I'm going to talk to you about Chase Brown. And Chase Brown is the guy because you can't sell Zach Moss right now. Brown was able to put together a very serviceable week this week with the touchdown, which ended up, really saving his day. Otherwise, this would have been like about a 50 or 60 yard day, which, you got to give him credit. A 60-yard day for these, dual backs is pretty decent. This is against the Giants, but Chase Brown and this Bengals offense, it just doesn't feed running backs specifically. This Bengals team's 7th worst in the NFL in rushing yards per game. Brown, he hit a high of 15 carries about 3 weeks ago, but that's ticked down. So he ticked up, and then now he has ticked back down to around 10 this past week. Brown's sporting around a 35% snap percentage with a 38% attempt percentage. So the available attempts, he's getting about 38% of those. Even though Zach Moss disappeared this week, that is comparative to Zach Moss, who has a 64% snap percentage and is getting around 47% of the attempts. Also in the backfield, as far as receiving goes, Moss is still out targeting on passing downs Chase Brown around 2.5%. So I can make these cases. What I see is a Bengals running back that has a good week, has a little bit of momentum, because what you're doing is you're coming off of Zach Moss, who's been disappointing, to a guy that everybody loved in the preseason. So there's this like hype, this excitement. Is it Chase Brown season? It's not. It's no Bengals running back season. I want out, and I want to take advantage of Chase Brown having a decent week where his snaps and everything went up over Zach Moss, because Zach Moss is going to come back in and make this annoying. This team doesn't want to run. And Chase Brown doesn't have the equity of being the only receiving back. They're using Zach Moss more like that. So I just don't want to be involved. And I'm not big into the stock trade market of trades and stuff like that. But this would be one like, ooh, I see the high, get me out. Don't want to be a part of the Bengals. So I am out, and I'm trying to sell on Chase Brown this week.
Erickson, 6 weeks into the season, how are you evaluating this backfield?
I mean, I think it is Chase Brown season. So, Welsh, send me your Chase Brown trades, because I want him. I want him on my team. Look, this is what we've been waiting for. This is what we've been building up week after week. I think after week 1, it was like, yes, Zach Moss won the battle, but the war is not over. And Chase Brown, every single week, is up and up and up. I get the idea behind selling high while the peak is there. That's exactly the move you make when you're trying to sell players for the maximum return. So I understand that play on this particular backfield. But Chase Brown is checking off all the boxes of the things why we liked him in the preseason. He looks explosive. He's scoring touchdowns. This is a great offense. And Zach Moss is playing worse. Again, both guys fumbled, and Chase Brown really got lucky with that fumble at the end of the game, because if that goes to the other team and they lose because of him, then that's a big issue. And then he ended up scoring on the next play. So he did get lucky in that capacity, but I don't know. I still like Chase Brown a lot. And I think that he's going in an upward trajectory where Zach Moss is going in the other direction. You're kind of out on the backfield overall, which I understand, but I don't think Zach Moss is going to be as big a threat as you think that he is. We're starting to see the backfield shift in favor of Chase Brown at the expense of Zach Moss. So that's the way I see it, at least. So I'm going to just continue to ride the Chase Brown.
Erickson, who's your running back to sell?
I'm looking at running back Bucky Irving for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He got the start this week with Rachaad White out with a foot injury. And amazingly enough, it was Sean Tucker that actually really stole the show on the ground. Former Syracuse alum, 14 rushes for 136 yards. And yes, a lot of it came in garbage time where the Buccaneers were putting an absolute beating on the New Orleans Saints. But Sean Tucker was involved in the beginning of the game too. He was involved as a receiver out of the backfield, kind of taking on that Rachaad White pass catching role, taking a pass to the end zone for a touchdown. And the big thing with me is Welsh talked about being out of the Bengals backfield. I kind of want to get out of the Buccaneers backfield because we heard Todd Bowles after the game talking about how Sean Tucker is now deserving to get more snaps and more carries in this offense based on his performance. And then he was talking about, when Rachaad White comes back, we could have a 3-headed monster. And my immediate reaction to that is gross. I don't want that whatsoever. 3 running backs in an offense that, yes, has been really good and exciting, but you're going to be pulling your hair out every single week trying to figure out which Buccaneers running back do I want to play this week? Are they behind? Are they winning? Who's getting the red zone usage? Is it changing every single week? And Todd Bowles has been pretty reliable per the Coach Speak Index based on how he's looking at projected workloads for certain players. So I'm buying what he's saying about, hey, we're going to have a 3-headed workload here between these 3 running backs because we like all of them. And that's just not a recipe for success in fantasy football. So given that Bucky still had a good game, he still scored a touchdown, Rachaad White is still injured, I still think you can get a lot for Bucky Irving. So as a guy that we were excited about, we were telling to buy a couple weeks ago, I think now is the time to cash out while his stock is at its peak, I think for a more stable asset with another running back or wide receiver.
Welsh, what do you think about this one? I mean, from my perspective, I agree with Erickson in that, I hear 3-headed monster, I want no part of that. It's a backfield that I think will be frustrating the rest of the way. But on the other hand, this is really the first real signs of anything we've seen from Sean Tucker. So maybe it was just kind of a one-off. I mean, I also expect the running backs to struggle in Monday night in week 7 because they're going up against the Ravens, who they're very bad against the pass, but they're very good against the run. So what do you make of this pick from Erickson with Bucky and kind of the similar question to the Bengals? Just how are you evaluating this backfield in general?
Yeah, I mean, I think the logic makes sense. I guess I would just look at it and be like, is one game going to take Bucky Irving completely out of this? I mean, I also don't know what his value looks like enough to people. He was already the complimentary back, the second back in that looked like he's the best runner. That's the other weird thing. He's the best physical runner on this team. Pass catcher is Rachaad White. Sean Tucker is this complement of a little bit of everything. So is he really going to come in and take a full third? No, I do not believe that. I think Bucky Irving is still relatively well served, but any type of 3-headed monster is not good. This 2-piece isn't that great, though they started to kind of break this apart a little bit where Rachaad White was becoming even more of that receiving side and Bucky Irving was getting the rushes. If you could move off of Bucky Irving for adequate value, yeah, I mean, I get it. This is not going to be ideal. I just don't know what that looks like. And I'm not sure that this 1 week of Sean Tucker will change the usage dramatically from Bucky Irving. So if you're selling him to just get the hell out and you're like, I'll trade you Bucky Irving for, actually, I was about to say Tyler Algier, but I don't know. Maybe that is actually a decent one who was probably a top waiver wire guy. I'm not sure. I'm just looking to dump Bucky Irving. So I don't think it's over. And I think I'm a little less reactionary to 1 week of a back that wasn't relevant the entire season, completely blowing up this entire backfield. But 3 guys is not good. And this does have the smells of the Bengals, except they do run the ball. The Bengals don't want to run the ball. So that's a little bit of the difference. Chase Brown versus Bucky Irving might be an interesting one rest of season. I don't know. I might rather Chase Brown, possibly.
We're back, baby.
Maybe.
I think definitely Chase Brown.
Let's go. We're back.
Neither. Give me neither. I would Daria and Gubawale. I would rather. I don't want any of those.
What about Tyrone Tracy?
Tyrone against who? Chase or Bucky?
Both.
Bucky.
Okay.
I mean, Tracy, I think will eat into Singletary, but I think you're blowing Bucky up here because of Sean Tucker off of 1 week, and I'm not willing to do that with Bucky Irving's the most talented running back on that team. So I don't think they're going to do that because cool Sean Tucker had a big game.
Chase Brown is RB26 rest of season in ECR. Bucky Irving RB30. So Brown is a couple spots higher there. That will probably update throughout the week. Guys, low testosterone affects about 30% of adult men in America. Are you feeling the drag of fatigue, noticing a dip in muscle mass, or sensing a slump in libido? If so, it's time to get your testosterone levels tested. If you have low T, Kizotrex is an FDA-approved pill that's changing the game in testosterone replacement therapy. In fact, Kizotrex restored testosterone levels in nearly 9 out of 10 clinical study participants, and its unique formulation bypasses the liver to avoid liver damage. It's time to break free from injections, pellets, and gels. Choose Kizotrex and take a step toward being the hero of your life again. To see if you qualify, visit Kizotrex.com and take the low T quiz today. That's KYZATREX.com. By prescription only, Kizotrex is a controlled substance that can be a target of abuse. Kizotrex is not for use in pregnant women or men with prostate or breast cancer. Safety and efficacy in those younger than 18 is not known. Tell your doctor about all medical conditions and medications. Serious side effects could include increased blood pressure, worsening prostate symptoms, increased risk of prostate cancer, blood clots in the legs or lungs, decreased sperm count, liver problems, enlarged or painful breasts, and breathing problems while you sleep. Common side effects include swelling of the ankles, feet, or body, increased red blood cell count, and increase in prostate-specific antigen or PSA levels. PSA is a test used to detect prostate cancer. Report these symptoms to your doctor. Call your doctor to learn more about Kizotrex. For more questions or information, visit www.kizotrex.com or call 1-833-949-5040. All right, guys, let's wrap up with some quick buy, sell, or hold on the running backs. We'll do 2 trios here. First one, Erickson, DeAndre Swift, Jordan Mason, Chuba, Hubbard. Who are you buying? Who are you selling? Who are you holding?
This is a tough one for me. I think I'm going to hold DeAndre Swift because he's just been an absolute monster ever since I said to sell him a couple weeks ago, after I said to buy him low when he was at bottom level. And of course, I was wrong each of those weeks. So I think with Swift, I think you just got to ride the wave. With him, the Bears offense is looking much better. They have a really favorable schedule coming off of their bye week. He's also on a bye right now. So I'm not sure you're going to get the full value of Swift if you try to trade him. So I think that he's a hold for me. Chuba Hubbard, I think, is probably the guy I want to buy because nobody wants this guy because everyone's afraid of Jonathan Brooks. But Chuba Hubbard is 4th in the NFL in yards from scrimmage per game. Chuba Hubbard on a pretty bad Panthers offense overall. And all this guy is just doing is just balling out and producing every single week, even when you had Bryce Young as the quarterback. Chuba Hubbard was still producing. So I don't know when Brooks is coming back again. He's their long-term answer at running back. So do they really have any incentive to rush Jonathan Brooks back? Man, we need to fire this guy up now. We have to use him to get touches. Maybe it changes a little bit in the playoff scenarios, but right now, all Chuba Hubbard does is produce. And having that on your roster, I feel like is pretty good. So I think that he's probably the cheapest of these guys. That's probably why he's a buy. And unfortunately, that just kind of makes Mason a sell, I guess. I don't feel great about selling Mason, but you have the ambiguity with McCaffrey. Is he coming back? You have Mason now dealing with another injury as well. And is he starting to, start to feel the wear and tear of the season? He's not a guy that's typically seen this type of workload, and now he's been thrown into a 3-down workhorse role, and now he's starting to get banged up. So we start to see the carries come off of Jordan Mason a little bit. Maybe this is a reason why he'd be a sell. But again, I don't love the sell on Mason, but just kind of default based on the other 2 guys in the conversation.
Welsh, what do you think? Swift, Mason, Hubbard.
So I think Swift is the hold. I definitely think he's the hold. His usage looking like a top back over the last couple of weeks. It seems like they have just kind of established themselves that they want to run with him. But I'm going to flip the buy and the sell. I'm going to buy Jordan Mason because I disagree. Mason's the lowest of this group. Chuba Hubbard's like 3rd most rushing yards, I think, in the NFL right now. Like Jordan Mason, and I could have that wrong. Maybe I was looking at another stat, but Chuba's up there. I think Chuba's value is at an all-time high right now. And if Sean Tucker can come in off of 1 week and make us hate the Bucs, what's Jonathan Brooks going to do? to you, Erickson, when he has one game where he goes off with Chuba Hubbard. We're all going to be screaming about Jonathan Brooks because that's what we're waiting for. So I think this team is going down, it's a downward spiral. I think Chuba could be a trade candidate. Jonathan Brooks comes in, and if that doesn't happen, Jonathan Brooks comes in, maybe it takes a couple weeks, probably going to take some of this usage away on a really, really bad team. And like I said, I think we're wrong here. I think Jordan Mason is the lowest of value. He got hurt. Isaac Guerrero came in. You've got Christian McCaffrey's window opening up soon. And I think people are like, get Mason out of here. I think there's still a possibility that Mason could be the guy for quite some time. Just because the window's opening up does not mean we're going to see McCaffrey soon. It also doesn't mean we're going to see solo McCaffrey on one of the best offenses in the NFL. That's the best offense of the three backs that you picked here. So McCaffrey will take over some, but I think Mason's an all-time buy. I think Chuba is at an all-time sell. And DeAndre Swift, that porridge, just right.
One other trio here I want to do: buy, sell, or hold: Kareem Hunt, Tyrone Tracy, and Tank Bigsby. Welsh, I'll start with you on this one. Kareem Hunt,
why do I get
Tyrone
this
Tracy,
start?
Tank Bigsby.
You start me with this one. I am going to buy Tank Bigsby, hold Kareem Hunt, and sell Tyrone Tracy. I kind of want to sell Kareem Hunt, maybe like hold Tyrone Tracy. I'm going to buy Bigsby, though, because it's just a disaster with ETN right now. I will say one thing you didn't love to see was that they clearly do not trust Bigsby in passing downs, and that'll never be the case. And that actually might make all of these guys are thrown into weird situations. But I just feel like with the ETN injury stuff and where he's going and what we've talked about as Tank as a buy for me, I need to kind of hold on to that. So we're gonna buy the Tank. The other two are tough because, is Devin Singletary enough to hold Tyrone Tracy back? Maybe not. Like, that really might not be the case. But I feel like Kareem Hunt is really establishing himself in this offense. Got the 49ers coming up this week who've been susceptible at the run. So I think I would buy on that, and then I would probably sell off Tyrone Tracy, because there's also a scenario where Tracy might go back to being nothing when Singletary gets back. So that's how I'm going to approach it. Erickson, blow this thing up, man. How the hell do you look at this?
I'm buying Tyrone Tracy. Devin Singletary's not getting his job back. That's not happening after we've seen Tracy ball out the last 2 weeks. Look, Singletary is the guy until they find somebody better. That's always been his MO as a running back in the NFL. He's good. He's solid until they find somebody better. And over the last 2 weeks, they found somebody better, and his name is Tyrone Tracy. So I'm going to buy Tracy. I'm going to hold Bigsby because of the things like you mentioned, Welsh, where ETN is injured. Bigsby's coming off a bad game. You can't sell him off the bad game, and he's facing the Patriots this week, who just got truck sticked by Joe Mixon and Dameon Pierce. So I think that Bigsby's probably going, if you're going to sell Bigsby, you got to at least wait a week for him to have a big game against the Patriots in London. And then Kareem Hunt. I don't know how long this is going to last for him. He's an older running back. Yes, I think that he's probably set up the best. But again, going back to the sell theory and thesis, who can you get the most for? It's Kareem Hunt, because you just look at what he did the last time he was there. Oh, he's a clear bell cow. He was great. He was effective. But this Chiefs offense does weird things with their running backs all the time. They have the whole bye week. Maybe they're, hey, let's use Samaje Perine more. Let's use Carson Steele. Now it's not guaranteed to happen, but the fear of any of that happening for me concerns me long-term about Kareem Hunt. And in the fantasy football playoffs, is Kareem Hunt going to be my guy to lead me to victory, especially with what if Pacheco comes back? Then you don't even necessarily have Kareem Hunt during the fantasy playoffs. So I think for those reasons, I think I would probably sell Hunt. And going back to the Mason Chuba Hubbard debate, Welsh, I think that I want to change my answer. I think you convinced me.
Oh,
wow.
It was really the Sean Tucker dichotomy where you're like, you saw Sean Tucker, then what do you think Jonathan Brooks is going to do? I'm like, he's so right. Oh my God. What was I thinking?
You know you're going to feel it. Your soul will be tugged. When Jonathan Brooks breaks a 40-yarder, your soul is going to be tugged at.
And you're 100% right, because even if Brooks doesn't get a full workload, I know that he can rip off a big play. So, I think that I'm going to change my answer. And I think I have Hubbard in a couple spots. So you think that based on the value you talked about, I could trade Hubbard right now to get Mason? You're under the belief
I think I really do. I could be wrong about that. I wish we were a live show right now and we could put a poll out there, but I think people now, the only problem with that is like
people like me that love Chuba Hubbard,
but also like the same people that are like, well, McCaffrey's coming. Jonathan Brooks is kind of coming as well. And Chuba has been really good. So, but I think it's pretty close. I really, really do. I think the arrow is pointing down in a lot of people's minds on Mason, and everybody is like, we are winning with Chuba Hubbard right now. So I think they're close.
I think you're hitting on something where the fear is almost subsiding with Jonathan Brooks, where, okay, well, now it's not going to be a big deal when you think about it, it should be the opposite because we're getting closer and he's getting healthier every single week, that the fear should almost be building.
Also, the coaching staff, they just said they were kind of like indifferent when they said, like, what will Jonathan Brooks be? They're like, we're going to have to see when he gets out. They didn't do this big glowing like, oh, it's Jonathan Brooks season. They're just like, we'll see once he gets out there. He hasn't been out there. And that might create more of this like backdrop for Chuba Hubbard where people are like, oh, see, they don't even really care. It's Chuba season. That might be the difference there as well.
I guess for me too, it's a reminder that if I have Chuba and I can't trade him, I should probably just get Jonathan Brooks on that team just in case, because he's probably cheap.
Get that Brooks.
Don't forget about our weekly trade live stream on our YouTube channel where you can come and ask your specific trade questions. We'll be with you every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern. For those listening on the podcast, just head to youtube.com/fantasypros, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified of all of our weekly live streams. For Welsh and Erickson, I'm Ryan Wormeli. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We'll see you again next time.